No Hurling at the Dairy Door, Chapter 2, Part 2. As his gaze raked the hillside, now and then looking back down, his thoughts were diverted to the sheer splendour and exhilaration of the view below. He could detect the coastline of Wexford to the south, especially the havens of the Saltee Islands, the Greater Saltee, remembered by historians as the place where Bagnall Harvey of Colclough were captured after the 1798 rebellion. He saw Bree Hill, Vinegar Hill, Owlet Hill, Fourth Mountain, and Carrickburn Hill, another prawn-picking hill. His mind wandered back to the rebellion of '98, when the insurgents lit fires on these high vantage points to pass on a quick message. It was almost 20 years since he was last here. It was a bright, warm day, and it was doing him good. Climbing higher, he looked back again, a warm breeze pulling at his face. Small, light banks of clouds, followed by bright patches of blue, swept across the valleys and hills way down below, doing their best to rouse the endless patchwork of fields slumbering in the sun across the baronies of Wexford. He was now approaching the summit. He had exchanged greetings with many. Some acted with surprise at the sight of him, and others poked fun. "Hey, Bob, I didn't know you were a prawn picker," shouted a middle-aged man. Climbing higher and higher onto the blue rocky plateau of the Black Stairs, passing a spot a couple of 100 yards to his right, where a German fighter plane was to crash with the full loss of the crew members during the last World War. He picked his steps across the enormous rocky brow of the mountain top. He wasn't disappointed. There beneath lay the counties of Carlow and Kilkenny, a gargantuan sprawl of fertile fields stretching as far as the eye could see, and away to the left the silvery outline of the River Barrow as it snaked its way through Graiguenamanagh into picturesque St Mullins, on its way to meet up with its sister river, the Nore, on their mutual journey to New Ross and Waterford. As he looked down, he remembered reading in some history book that the Cistercian monks of Dushk Abbey in Graiguenamanagh had crossed over this very mountain, bringing the message of God to the Wexford side. In the process, they were to found a new monastery in the townland from which it gets its name, Monk's Grange. He was so absorbed for a short while he'd forgotten his raison d'etre. Bob Rackard was not a man to stand and stare, but as the warm, bright sunshine flooded up and across the mountain top, a gentle wind lapped at his trouser legs, adding further pleasure to the senses. He stood enthralled and fascinated by the vast panorama. He had been working late the previous night and felt a little tired. He stretched out on the spring grass topped turf, pulling his hat over his eyes. He felt drowsy, and in minutes he was fast asleep. When he finally looked at his watch, he was surprised to know that he had been somewhat somnolent, can't say that, condition for over an hour. He leapt quickly to his feet, and he brushed himself down and hurried down the mountainside, his eyes scanning left and right in the hope of seeing the girls. There weren't many people to be seen. Arriving back at the assembly plateau, he could see most people had left. There were just a few carts and an odd bike still there. He untied the pony, hopped in, and began the descent at a steady trot. He was feeling beaten. Driving at speed down a rugged path demands skill from both animal and driver. The more he drove this pony, the more he liked him. A judicious pull on his mouth was all that was needed. The pony responded instantly, dropping his backside into the breeching, which were the only brakes available on this hazardous downhill journey. Again, the joy of driving such a well-trained and honest animal was helping his mood. He made the descent to the boreen that had would bring him eventually onto the main road, which was approximately 3 miles from Killarn and his home. About half a mile on the road was a V junction where you turned left for Killarn and right for the parish of Davidstown. There were two similar ponies and traps pelting along about 200 yards ahead. His pony was pulling hard, which was a mixture of wanting to get home and wanting to catch up with the others, he thought. His mind was a sort of blank. As he was closing on the pair in front, but at the V junction, they went right. He kept straight on. For about 30 yards he could see across the low fence of the V junction. There were two people in the trap in the front, and they were waving at him. Two girls. He stood up to look closer. It was them all right. He quickly waved back, but in seconds they were gone, out of sight. Pattern at Killarn. Killarn is located at the end of the parish of Rathnewer, where the Catholic church, school and graveyard are. The original Catholic church, the Church of St. Anne, hence Killarn, stood in the present graveyard. There are no traces of it to be seen. The remaining rubble was used in the building of the new Protestant church, which was built on the other side of the road, with its new graveyard approximately in 1832. The old graveyard was then abandoned and left in the care of the Catholic community. The new graveyard in Rathnewer has long since taken over from the old Killarn one, which the Protestant church with its glebe house is in present day use and as well as being a feature on the local landscape. In the early part of this century, in my youth, the annual Pattern in Killarn was a momentous event not to be missed. The week prior to it, the graveyard would be a buzz of activity, general tidying being the order, with the next of kin busily cleaning headstones, cutting grass, renewing gravel and black sand which was brought from the derelict copper mines in nearby Came. Some laid fresh flowers on the graves for their departed loved ones. As patterns went, for whatever reason I cannot say, the Pattern of Killarn always had top billing over the neighbouring ones. For the biggest attendance and atmosphere it vied with St Mullins, across the mountain in County Carlow. The churchyard is circular, which I'm told proves its age. Many of the tombstones are 18th century. There is one large square slab in the middle with no engraving whatsoever. Whether this is covered the site of an unmarked mass grave, one can only speculate. The picturesque railings which were erected over the remains of John Kelly 100 years after his birth, the boy from Killarn was remembered and honoured in his old parish. I'll see you in the next chapter. You can tell I'm just getting used to this.